My name is Lula Martin, and at 52 years old, I thought I'd seen it all as a single mother. My 6-year-old son Dylan means everything to me. We've always had a complicated relationship with my parents and sister, but I trusted them with my child. That night, when the police officer stood at my door with my sobbing little boy, something inside me broke forever. If you're watching this, please like and subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Have you ever trusted family only to discover they'd betray you in the worst way imaginable? Life hasn't always been easy for me. 4 years ago, my husband walked out after I discovered he was cheating with a coworker. He left me alone to raise our 2-year-old son, Dylan. The divorce was messy and painful, but I pulled myself together for my little boy's sake. I had to be both mother and father, provider and nurturer, all while working full-time as a pediatric nurse at Mercy General Hospital. My parents, Margaret and Robert, live about 20 minutes away in the same house I grew up in. My mother has always been controlling and critical, analyzing my every decision and finding it lacking. At 73, she still has the energy to meddle in everyone's business, especially mine. My father, 75 now, is kind but passive. He's spent 50 years letting my mother make all the decisions, rarely standing up to her, even when he knows she's wrong. Then there's my younger sister, Amanda. At 48, she's always been the golden child in my mother's eyes. Amanda chose not to have children, a decision my mother oddly respects, despite her traditional values. Meanwhile, she constantly criticizes my parenting, suggesting I'm too lenient, too strict, too protective, or not protective enough depending on her mood that day. "Lula, you're smothering that boy," my mother would say whenever I comforted Dylan during one of his anxiety episodes. "He needs to toughen up." Amanda would chime in with, "This is exactly why I never wanted kids. Too much work, too much worry." These comments hurt, but I'd learned to brush them off. What bothered me more was how they sometimes treated Dylan. Small incidents that showed their dismissive attitude toward him had been happening more frequently. They'd interrupt him when he tried to share his excitement about dinosaurs. They'd promise him activities, then cancel at the last minute. They'd forget his food allergies despite my constant reminders. My day-to-day life was a careful balancing act between my nursing shifts, Dylan's school schedule, and family obligations that felt increasingly one-sided. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't exhausting. Some nights after putting Dylan to bed, I'd sit alone at the kitchen table and wonder how I'd keep it all together. Dylan is such a special little boy, sweet and sensitive with dark curly hair that falls into his eyes and a smile that lights up my world. He has this incredible enthusiasm for dinosaur space and anything involving science. He can name every dinosaur and tell you which period they lived in. His kindergarten teacher says he's academically advanced but struggles with anxiety in social situations. He gets overwhelmed in crowded, noisy places and sometimes has trouble separating from me. These challenges made me even more protective of him, something my family constantly criticized. I worried about how their attitudes affected Dylan, but as a working mother, I sometimes had no choice but to rely on them for childcare. Things got more complicated when I received a promotion at work 3 months ago. Becoming a charge nurse meant more responsibility, longer hours, and occasionally being on call. The increased salary helped our financial situation, but it also meant I needed more support with Dylan. "You can't expect us to rearrange our lives every time you get called into work," my mother complained during Sunday dinner at their house. "We have our own schedules, you know." "It's not every time, Mom," I replied, trying to keep my voice level while cutting Dylan's chicken into bite-sized pieces. "Just occasionally when there's no one else." "Well, maybe you should have thought about childcare before taking that promotion," she said, her tone making it clear she thought I was being selfish. Amanda nodded in agreement. "Career or motherhood, Lula? You can't excel at both." I bit my tongue to avoid saying something I'd regret in front of Dylan. My father, seeing my expression, tried to change the subject, but the damage was done. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Over the following weeks, things got worse. My mother's passive-aggressive comments about my parenting became more frequent and pointed. Amanda's resentment toward Dylan became increasingly obvious. She would sigh dramatically whenever he wanted to show her something, or roll her eyes when he asked questions. During a family birthday celebration for my father, Dylan accidentally spilled his juice on Amanda's designer purse. Before I could intervene, Amanda grabbed his arm roughly. "Do you know how much this cost?" she snapped. "Can't you be more careful?" Dylan's eyes filled with tears as I pulled him away from her. "He's 6, Amanda," I said firmly. "It was an accident." "This is why I can't have nice things around him," she muttered loud enough for Dylan to hear. Later that night, I overheard my mother consoling Amanda. "I know he's difficult, dear. Lula never sets proper boundaries, not like you would if you had children." Their words stung, but I told myself they didn't mean it, that they loved Dylan in their own way, that family was important and Dylan needed his grandparents and aunt in his life. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. I should have protected my son better. But I was exhausted, overworked, and desperately needed their help. I convinced myself things weren't as bad as they seemed. I was wrong. So terribly wrong. The morning it all happened started like any other busy day. I was preparing for an important night shift at the hospital. We were already short-staffed with 2 nurses out with the flu, so calling in wasn't an option. I had asked my parents 3 weeks in advance if they could take Dylan for the evening, and they had agreed, suggesting they'd take him to see the new animated dinosaur movie he'd been talking about for months. The morning sun streamed through our small kitchen window as Dylan sat at the table, dinosaur pajamas still on, excitedly eating his breakfast cereal. "Mom, do you think T-Rex really roared like they show in movies?" he asked, milk dribbling down his chin. I smiled, wiping his face with a napkin. "Scientists think they might have made deep rumbling sounds more like crocodiles than lions." His eyes widened with delight. "I'm going to ask Grandpa if we can go to the museum next time to see the dinosaur bones again." I knelt beside him, straightening his rumpled pajama top. "Today, you're going to see the dinosaur movie with Grandma, Grandpa, and Aunt Amanda. Are you excited?" His expression clouded slightly. "Will you come too?" "I wish I could, sweetheart, but remember I have to work at the hospital tonight. Some of the other nurses are sick and my patients need me." He nodded solemnly. "You help sick kids feel better." "That's right," I said, my heart squeezing at his understanding. "And Grandma and Grandpa will take good care of you. You'll have popcorn and see dinosaurs on the big screen." "Will Aunt Amanda be nice to me?" he asked in a small voice that broke my heart. I hesitated. "Aunt Amanda loves you in her own way, Dylan. She's just not used to being around children. Try to be on your best behavior, okay?" He nodded again, but the worry remained in his eyes. I felt that familiar guilt that plagues all working mothers torn between providing for my child and being there for every moment. I called my mother while Dylan was getting dressed, confirming the details for the evening. "We'll pick him up at 3, she said briskly. "The movie starts at 4:30. We'll get dinner afterward." "Thank you for doing this, Mom. It really helps me out." "Well, that's what family is for, isn't it?" she replied, though her tone suggested she was doing me an enormous favor. "Though I don't know why you couldn't get someone else to cover your shift." I explained again about the staffing shortage, but I could tell she wasn't really listening. Before hanging up, she added, "Don't pack him too many snacks. You know how Robert overindulges him with treats." After the call, I carefully packed Dylan's backpack, his favorite green one with dinosaur patterns. I included his comfort item, a small stuffed triceratops named Tops that he'd had since he was 3. I also packed his inhaler for his mild asthma, even though he rarely needed it, along with a change of clothes just in case. When Dylan came downstairs in his favorite dinosaur t-shirt and jeans, I went over the plan with him again. "Grandma and Grandpa will pick you up this afternoon. I've packed Tops in your backpack along with your inhaler and some snacks." "And my dinosaur book?" he asked anxiously. "Right here," I said, adding it to the backpack, "in case you get bored before the movie." When my parents arrived, I gave them detailed instructions about Dylan's routine and reminded them about his peanut allergy. "For goodness sake, Lula," my mother interrupted. "We've taken care of him before. We know what to do." Amanda sat in the car texting on her phone, not even bothering to come inside. When Dylan and I walked out, she glanced up briefly. "Hi, Aunt Amanda," Dylan said shyly, clutching his backpack. "Hey." she replied flatly, returning to her phone. Dylan clung to my leg when it was time for him to get in the car. Maybe I should stay home with you. I knelt down and hugged him tightly. You're going to have a wonderful time, sweetheart. The movie has all your favorite dinosaurs, and I'll be here when you get back, okay? We can talk all about the movie tomorrow morning. Promise, he asked. Cross my heart. I assured him, making the gesture that always made him smile. As he reluctantly climbed into the back seat, Amanda sighed loudly. He's always so clingy, she commented as I buckled his seatbelt. You should really work on that. I straightened up, fixing her with a firm look. He's 6, Amanda. It's completely normal. My mother intervened from the driver's seat. Honestly, Lula, you're so overprotective. It's not good for him. My parenting books say children need independence. I bit back a retort about how her parenting books from the 1970s might be outdated. Instead, I kissed Dylan goodbye and handed my father the backpack. His inhaler is in the front pocket just in case, I reminded him. Got it, honey, he said kindly. We'll take good care of him. As they drove away, Dylan's small face peered back at me through the rear window, his hand raised in goodbye. I felt a twist of unease in my stomach, but dismissed it as working mother guilt. They were his grandparents and his aunt. Whatever their faults, they wouldn't let any harm come to him. How wrong I was. My shift at Mercy General was particularly hectic that night. A bus accident had brought in multiple injured children, and the pediatric ward was in controlled chaos. As a charge nurse, I was responsible for coordinating care, assigning patients, and ensuring everything ran smoothly despite our staff shortage. Around 7:30, during a brief lull, I checked my phone and saw a text from my mother. Movie was good, having dinner now. The simple message reassured me, and I focused back on my work. The next few hours were a blur of medicine administrations, doctor consultations, and comforting frightened children. By the time my shift ended at 11, I was exhausted. My feet ached, and all I wanted was to take a hot shower and crawl into bed. The house was quiet when I got home, exactly as I expected. My parents would have brought Dylan home hours ago and put him to bed. I set my purse down on the kitchen counter and kicked off my shoes, pouring myself a glass of water. I had just sunk onto the couch, relishing the quiet moment when the doorbell rang. Strange, I thought. Who would be visiting at this hour? When I opened the front door, my heart stopped. A police officer stood on my doorstep, and beside him, clutching his hand with tear-stained cheeks, was Dylan. Ma'am, are you Lula Martin? The officer asked, his face serious. Yes, I whispered, dropping to my knees to pull Dylan into my arms. Dylan, baby, what happened? Where are Grandma and Grandpa? Dylan burst into fresh tears, burying his face in my neck. The officer, whose nameplate read Jenkins, explained in a gentle but concerned voice. Your son was found wandering alone near the Westfield shopping mall around 9:30 tonight. A couple spotted him crying outside the cinema and alerted security. He was able to tell us his name and your name, and we located your address. My mind couldn't process what I was hearing. But he was with my parents and sister. They took him to a movie. Officer Jenkins's expression grew more concerned. He was alone when he was found, ma'am. No adults were with him. He says he went to the bathroom during dinner at the restaurant, and when he came out, he couldn't find his family. He went looking for them and ended up outside. I held Dylan tighter, feeling him shiver against me despite the warm night. His skin was cold, and I realized with horror that his light jacket was missing. Come in, please, I told the officer, carrying Dylan inside. He felt lighter, somehow smaller, and more fragile than when I'd said goodbye to him that afternoon. In the living room, I wrapped Dylan in a blanket and checked him over with the efficiency of a nurse and the terror of a mother. He was physically unharmed, but clearly traumatized. His eyes were red and puffy from crying, and his stomach growled loudly. Are you hungry, sweetie? I asked, brushing his curls back from his forehead. He nodded. We didn't finish dinner. While I quickly made him a sandwich, Officer Jenkins asked me more questions. I explained about my parents taking Dylan to the movies, showed him the text I'd received confirming they were at dinner. And you haven't heard from them since? He asked. No, I realized with growing alarm. I assumed they'd brought him home and put him to bed. I just got off work. After Dylan had eaten a few bites of the sandwich, I gently asked him what happened. His story came out in fragments, interrupted by hiccuping sobs. We saw the dinosaur movie, and then we went to the restaurant next to the theater. I needed to go potty, and Grandma said to go by myself because I'm a big boy. When I came back, they weren't at our table anymore. I looked everywhere, Mom. I called for them. Fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. I went outside to see if they were by the car, but I couldn't find it. A nice lady asked if I was lost, and I told her I couldn't find Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Amanda. She took me to the security man. Rage and fear fought for dominance in my chest as I held my trembling son. How could they have left him? It was inconceivable. I need to contact your parents immediately, Officer Jenkins said, his tone now more official. This is a serious incident. With shaking hands, I called my mother's cell phone. No answer. I tried my father's. Straight to voicemail. I called Amanda. Nothing. After 3 attempts at each number, my mother finally answered. Lula? Why are you calling so late? She sounded annoyed, and I could hear laughter in the background. Mom. I struggled to keep my voice steady. Where is Dylan? There was a pause. Then incredibly she laughed. Oh, we didn't even notice. Is he not with us? Hold on. I heard her call out to Amanda asking about Dylan, and then my sister's voice in the background also laughing, saying they had no idea. My blood turned to ice. Mom, Dylan is home with me and a police officer. He was found wandering alone at the mall. Someone could have taken him. He could have been hit by a car. Another pause. Well, he shouldn't have wandered off, she said dismissively. We looked for him for a minute, but then Amanda had to get home for her beauty sleep. You know how she needs her 8 hours. We figured he'd turn up. In the background, I heard my father's voice saying something that sounded like an apology, but it was drowned out by my mother's next words. Really? Lula, you're overreacting. He's fine, isn't he? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Officer Jenkins, seeing my expression, asked for the phone. I handed it over, too shocked to speak. Ma'am, this is Officer Jenkins with the Westfield Police Department. I need to inform you that abandoning a child under these circumstances could constitute child endangerment. I'll need to take statements from all parties involved. Can you and the others who were with the child this evening come to the station tomorrow morning? I couldn't hear my mother's response, but Officer Jenkins' face remained serious as he took notes. When he handed the phone back, the line was dead. I've documented the incident. He told me, his kind eyes now filled with professional concern. Child Protective Services will need to be notified as a matter of procedure. I understand this is upsetting, but right now your son needs you to be calm and present for him. After he left, promising to follow up the next day, I held Dylan until he finally fell into an exhausted sleep around 1 in the morning. As I watched his little chest rise and fall, tears slipped silently down my face. This wasn't negligence or forgetfulness. The laughter in their voices told me everything I needed to know. They had abandoned my child on purpose, and they thought it was funny. That night was one of the longest of my life. Dylan woke up screaming twice from nightmares, convinced he was alone in the dark mall again. Each time I held him, rocked him, and assured him he was safe, while my own heart shattered into pieces. When morning finally came, Dylan refused to let me out of his sight, even to use the bathroom. He followed me around like a shadow, clutching Tops the Triceratops so tightly I feared the stuffed animal would tear. The confident little boy who loved to describe dinosaur species in exacting detail was gone, replaced by a frightened child who jumped at every sound. I called into work, explaining the situation to my supervisor, who immediately approved emergency family leave. As I hung up, my phone began to ring. My mother's name flashed on the screen. Taking a deep breath, I answered. "How dare you involve the police?" she hissed without preamble. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? What will people think? What will people think?" I repeated incredulously. "You abandoned your 6-year-old grandson at a mall, Mother. You left him alone in a public place and drove away. You didn't call me. You didn't call the police. What exactly did you expect me to think?" "He wandered off," she insisted. Children do that. You did it yourself once at a department store, but you didn't have us arrested for it. I called you multiple times. You were laughing about it. You're blowing this completely out of proportion, she said coldly. This is why you've always been so difficult, Lula. Always the drama queen. Amanda agrees with me completely. As if summoned, my phone pinged with a text from my sister. This is why I don't have kids. Too much drama. You should be thanking us for taking him at all. I was about to respond when another call came in, this time from my father. Lula, honey. He began, his voice apologetic but still defensive. Your mother is very upset about all this. She feels you've overreacted by involving the authorities. Dad, they found Dylan alone crying looking for you. How is that overreacting? He sighed. You know how your mother gets. And Amanda was tired. We thought he might have gone to the bathroom again, but we had already paid the bill, and Amanda had an early meeting today. So you just left without making sure? My voice broke. He's 6 years old, Dad. 6. He was terrified. I know, and I'm sorry about that, truly. But your mother feels that your reaction is excessive. She's worried about what the neighbors will think if police are coming around asking questions. The conversation left me feeling hollow. Not once did they ask how Dylan was doing. Their only concern was for their reputation, their convenience. Later that morning, my colleague Sarah called to check in. She listened as I poured out the whole story, her gasps of horror validating my feelings. Lula, that's not normal, she said firmly. That's not a misunderstanding or a mistake. They abandoned your child and then laughed about it. Have they always been this way? Her question made me reflect on patterns I'd normalized over years. The constant criticism, the dismissal of my feelings, the subtle undermining of my confidence. I'd accepted it all as just how families were, but Sarah's reaction made me see it through new eyes. Maybe you should consider family counseling, she suggested. If you want them to remain in Dylan's life, there need to be serious boundaries and acknowledgement of what happened. I agreed, but when I tentatively suggested counseling to my mother, in a text, her response was scathing. We don't need some stranger telling us how to be a family. If anyone needs therapy, it's you and your overdependent son. That afternoon, Dylan refused to go to school. The mere thought of being separated from me sent him into a panic attack, his small body shaking as he gasped for air. I held him through it, administering his inhaler and whispering reassurances. When he had calmed enough, I called his kindergarten teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, to explain the situation. Her concern was immediate and genuine. Poor Dylan, she said. Take all the time he needs. I've noticed he's been anxious lately, especially when your sister picked him up last month. He didn't want to go with her. This was news to me. My sister picked him up when? About 3 weeks ago. You'd texted that you were stuck at work and she'd get him. She seemed annoyed about it. Dylan cried, but she told him to stop being a baby. I felt sick. I had never texted any such thing. Someone had impersonated me to take my child from school. Before I could process this disturbing information, another call came in from a number I didn't recognize. It was Child Protective Services. A caseworker named Janet Weber wanted to schedule a home visit to follow up on the police report. My stomach knotted with fear. Could I lose custody of Dylan because of my family's actions? This is standard procedure, Ms. Martin, she assured me. From what I understand, you weren't the one who abandoned your son. We just need to make sure he has a safe environment. After scheduling the visit for the following day, I sat on the couch watching Dylan listlessly arranging his dinosaur figures. He hadn't touched them since coming home, but now he was lining them up in a protective circle around his stuffed triceratops. Honey, I said gently, can we talk about what happened yesterday? He looked up, his eyes still shadowed with fear. Am I in trouble? No, sweetheart, absolutely not. You did exactly the right thing by asking for help when you were lost. I'm so proud of you for being brave. He scooted closer to me on the couch. Aunt Amanda told me to wait by the car while they paid the bill. She said they'd come right out. I waited and waited, but they never came. Something cold settled in my chest. Did you see them drive away? He nodded, tears filling his eyes again. I saw Grandma's car leaving the parking lot. I ran after it, but it went too fast. I heard them laughing inside. The deliberateness of it stunned me. This wasn't a case of losing track of a child. They had intentionally left him, told him to wait somewhere, and driven off laughing. What about your backpack, Dylan? And your jacket? I left my backpack in Grandma's car. And my jacket, too. Tops was in there. He looked down at the stuffed dinosaur in his arms. But the nice policeman found another Tops for me at the station. He's not exactly the same, though. That explained why he'd been so cold when the police brought him home. They'd driven away with all his belongings, including his inhaler. The next revelation came when I confronted my parents in person the following day. After the CPS visit, which went smoothly, but left me feeling exposed and judged, I drove to my parents' house determined to get answers. My mother answered the door with a martyr's sigh. I suppose you've come to continue your accusations. I pushed past her into the house, scanning the living room for any sign of Dylan's belongings. Where's Dylan's backpack, the green dinosaur one? How should I know? She replied dismissively. He probably left it somewhere. He's so careless with his things. Something made me walk toward the kitchen, where I saw the garbage can by the back door. Peering inside, I spotted a flash of green. I reached in and pulled out Dylan's backpack, still containing his book snacks and inhaler. You threw away his things? I asked, my voice barely audible through my shock. You threw away his medication? My mother waved her hand dismissively. Amanda was cleaning out the car and found it. We assumed you had others. You're always so excessive with his medical supplies. I held the backpack to my chest, feeling physically ill. This isn't about an inhaler. This is about the fact that you deliberately abandoned my son. Dylan told me Amanda instructed him to wait by the car, then you drove away. He saw you leaving. He heard you laughing. Children make up stories all the time, my mother said coldly. You of all people should know that, Lula. You were always inventing tales for attention. Are you actually suggesting that Dylan made this up? That the police found him crying alone at the mall as some sort of elaborate prank? I'm suggesting that you've raised a child who can't handle being on his own for 5 minutes without falling apart. And now you're using this incident to attack us when we've done nothing but help you since that husband of yours walked out. That was the moment I realized the depth of my mother's capacity for cruelty. Standing in her immaculate kitchen, holding my son's discarded possessions that she'd thrown away like trash, I finally saw the truth. She didn't love Dylan. Maybe she didn't even love me. We were props in her life, useful when we performed, as expected, disposable when we didn't. We're done here, I said quietly, turning to leave. Don't be ridiculous, she called after me. You can't raise that boy alone. You need us. I paused at the door. No, Mother. I don't think I do. Not anymore. 3 days later, I received a text from my father asking if we could all get together to sort things out. He suggested dinner at their house, just family, to talk through the misunderstanding. Against my better judgment, I agreed, hoping that maybe, just maybe, they were ready to acknowledge what they'd done and apologize. I should have known better. When Dylan and I arrived that evening, we found not just my parents and Amanda, but my Uncle Tom, my mother's sister Elaine, and 2 cousins. It was an ambush, plain and simple. What's this? I asked, keeping Dylan close to my side as we entered the crowded living room. We thought it would be good to have the whole family together, my mother said smoothly. Everyone's concerned about the recent events. My Uncle Tom, my father's older brother, approached with a grave expression. Lula, we're all here because we care about you and Dylan. The next 2 hours were among the most surreal of my life. My family had constructed an entire alternative narrative of what had happened. According to them, Dylan was a problematic child who wandered off constantly. My mother presented herself as a misunderstood grandmother who had searched desperately for him, while Amanda claimed she'd been ready to call the police herself when I overreacted and involved authorities unnecessarily. My father sat silently through most of it, occasionally nodding in agreement with my mother, but avoiding my eyes. The boy needs structure. Uncle Tom pronounced, despite having seen Dylan perhaps twice a year at family gatherings. And frankly, Lula, we're all wondering if you're really equipped to provide that as a single mother, working those crazy hospital hours. What exactly are you suggesting? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. My Aunt Elaine patted my hand condescendingly. We're just concerned, dear. Your mother tells us you've been under tremendous stress. Perhaps Dylan would benefit from spending more time here with your parents. A stable environment. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. This wasn't about the incident at the mall. This was about control. My mother wanted custody of Dylan, or at least decision-making power over his upbringing. Before I could respond, Amanda made a surprising announcement. I've been thinking a lot about this, and I've decided I might want children after all. Seeing Dylan has made me realize what I've been missing. My mother's face lit up with genuine joy, a reaction I rarely saw directed at anything I did. That's wonderful news, Amanda. You'll make such a wonderful mother. The subtext was clear. Amanda would be the good mother, unlike me. Perhaps even a replacement mother for Dylan. As this revelation sank in, I heard a small sound from the hallway. Dylan had slipped away from my side during the conversation and was now standing in the doorway to the guest bedroom, tears streaming down his face. I rushed to him, kneeling to his level. What's wrong, sweetheart? Aunt Amanda called me that problem child, he whispered. She told Grandma I'm too much trouble. She said maybe I should live here so you can work without worrying about me. Fury unlike anything I'd ever experienced coursed through me. I stood up, lifting Dylan into my arms, despite him being almost too big for me to carry. We're leaving, I announced. And I want to be very clear about something. What happened at the mall wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. Amanda told Dylan to wait by the car, and then you drove away knowing he was alone. You laughed about it. You threw away his belongings. And now you're trying to convince our extended family that I'm an unfit mother. My mother's face contorted with rage. How dare you make such accusations in front of everyone? After everything we've done for you. Tell them the truth, Mother. Tell them how you laughed when I called frantically looking for my son. Tell them how you didn't even bother to call me or the police when you lost him. You ungrateful little... she hissed. And then to my shock, she slapped me hard across the face. The room went silent. Dylan whimpered in my arms. My cheek stung, but something inside me had finally broken free. Without another word, I carried Dylan out of the house and strapped him into the car. As we drove away, my phone began to explode with notifications. Amanda was texting vicious messages about my parenting. My uncle was leaving voicemails suggesting they might need to take legal steps for Dylan's well-being. Only my father sent a simple text, "I'm sorry. Too little, too late." That evening, after putting a still-shaken Dylan to bed, I contacted a family lawyer. Jennifer Torres listened to my story with growing concern, taking detailed notes. "What you're describing is extremely serious," she said. "Intentionally abandoning a child is endangerment, potentially even a criminal offense, and the threat of seeking custody makes this even more concerning. I recommend we file for a temporary restraining order immediately, especially given the physical assault." "Will they investigate me too?" I asked, my voice small. "Could I lose Dylan because of what they did?" Jennifer's expression softened. "Lula, you did everything right. You weren't the one who abandoned your child. You're the one protecting him now. But we should document everything just in case. Save all texts, voicemails, emails. We'll build a case so strong that no one will question your fitness as a mother." As I hung up, I felt a strange mixture of grief and relief. The family I had known was gone, revealed to be something twisted and harmful. But for the first time, I was seeing clearly, and that clarity, painful as it was, felt like the first step toward healing. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal proceedings, therapy appointments, and rebuilding a sense of security for Dylan. On Jennifer's recommendation, I enrolled Dylan in sessions with Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a child psychologist specializing in trauma. Dylan is experiencing acute anxiety and symptoms consistent with abandonment trauma. Dr. Mitchell explained after their third session. But children are remarkably resilient when they have consistent support and feel safe. In his therapy sessions, Dylan gradually revealed more about his experiences with his grandmother and aunt. Through play therapy with dinosaur figures, he acted out scenes where the mean dinosaurs would say hurtful things to the little dinosaur when no one else was around. "Grandma told me I'm too sensitive like my mom," he confided to Dr. Mitchell while I observed through a one-way mirror, my heart breaking. "Aunt Amanda said I ruined Mom's life by being born. Is that true?" Hearing these words, I had to step away, tears streaming down my face. The casual cruelty they had inflicted on my child while I wasn't present was almost unbearable. During this time, I reconnected with my estranged cousin Jennifer, my mother's niece, who had cut ties with the family years ago. Over coffee at a quiet cafe, she shared her own experiences. "Aunt Margaret did similar things to me," she revealed. "The constant criticism, the manipulation turning family members against each other. When I finally stood up to her, she made sure everyone believed I was mentally unstable. It took me years of therapy to understand it wasn't my fault." "Do you think she's a narcissist?" I asked, the term I'd been researching since my conversations with Dylan's therapist. Jennifer nodded. "Classic narcissistic personality traits. And Amanda learned from the master. They feed off each other, building up this fantasy where they're perfect and everyone else is flawed." Understanding the pattern helped, but it didn't ease the pain of knowing what Dylan had endured. I blamed myself for not seeing it sooner, for exposing him to their toxicity. My therapist, whom I'd started seeing at Dr. Mitchell's suggestion, helped me work through these feelings of guilt. "You were raised to normalize their behavior," she explained. "Children of narcissists are conditioned to seek approval and blame themselves when it's withheld. Breaking that pattern is incredibly difficult, especially when you're also dealing with single parenthood and a demanding career." A breakthrough in our case came when the mall security office contacted Officer Jenkins. They had reviewed their surveillance footage from that night and found clear evidence of what happened. The video showed Amanda pointing toward the exit doors while speaking to Dylan, then returning to my parents. All three adults walked to the car, looked back toward the mall entrance, and drove away. The timestamp showed they waited less than 2 minutes before leaving. Officer Jenkins called me personally. "Ms. Martin, this changes things. This wasn't negligence. This was intentional child abandonment. The district attorney wants to talk to you about pressing charges." The idea of criminal charges against my own family was surreal, but the evidence was undeniable. They had deliberately left a 6-year-old child alone in a public place at night. Meanwhile, my colleagues at the hospital rallied around us. They created a schedule to help with childcare during my shifts, taking turns staying with Dylan, or having him come to their homes. My supervisor rearranged the rotation to give me more day shifts, making it easier to be home in the evenings when Dylan's anxiety was worst. My neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, a retired elementary school teacher in her 70s, became an unexpected ally. After hearing what happened, she offered to watch Dylan whenever I needed. Her kind, grandmotherly presence became a healing force in his life, showing him that older adults could be trustworthy and loving. Slowly, Dylan began to recover. The nightmares became less frequent. He started talking about dinosaurs again, his natural curiosity re-emerging. One afternoon, I found him explaining to Mrs. Wilson the difference between herbivores and carnivores, his hands animated as he described the various dental structures. It was the first time I'd seen him fully engaged since the incident. Meanwhile, I made the difficult decision to cut contact completely with my parents and Amanda. I changed our phone numbers, installed a security system with cameras, and notified Dylan's school that only I or specifically authorized individuals could pick him up. My father made one weak attempt to reconcile showing up at our house with a dinosaur toy for Dylan. "Your mother doesn't know I'm here," he admitted when I met him on the porch, not inviting him inside. "She's still convinced you're overreacting. But I wanted to say I'm sorry. I should have stopped them from leaving. I should have called you immediately." "Why didn't you?" I asked the question that had haunted me for weeks. He looked down, shoulders slumped. "I've spent 50 years not standing up to your mother. It's easier to go along. but seeing what it did to Dylan, I can't excuse it anymore. His apology felt insufficient given the harm done, but it was something. I told him I'd consider allowing him supervised visits with Dylan in the future, but only after Dylan's therapist felt he was ready. Amanda, however, escalated her harassment. She began showing up at Dylan's school, telling the office staff she was there to surprise him for lunch. Thankfully, the school had been warned and denied her access, but it frightened Dylan to know she had tried to get to him. Jennifer arranged for a formal cease and desist letter to be sent to both my parents and Amanda, warning that any further contact would result in legal action. The district attorney, after reviewing the mall footage and Dylan's testimony to a child advocacy specialist, decided to file formal charges of child endangerment against both my mother and Amanda. As we prepared for the court hearing gathering evidence and statements, I worried about the impact on Dylan of having to potentially testify. Dr. Mitchell worked with him using anatomically correct dolls and drawings to help him communicate his experience without being re-traumatized. The most healing moment came during one of their sessions when Dylan looked up from his drawing of the mall incident and said clearly, "It's not my fault they left me. They did a bad thing, not me." Dr. Mitchell caught my eye over Dylan's head, giving me a subtle nod. It was a breakthrough, the beginning of Dylan understanding that the adults who should have protected him had failed not because of any deficiency in him, but because of their own issues. For the first time since that terrible night, I felt hope that we would eventually be okay. The court ruling came 6 months after the mall incident. The judge granted a permanent restraining order against my mother and sister, requiring them to stay at least 500 feet away from Dylan and me, with no contact allowed by phone, email, or third parties. My father, in a move that shocked everyone, testified on our behalf. Standing in the witness box, his voice shaking, but determined, he confirmed that Amanda had deliberately instructed Dylan to wait outside while they drove away. "It was wrong," he stated simply. "I knew it was wrong, and I did nothing to stop it. I failed my grandson and my daughter." His testimony likely contributed to the judge's decision to allow him limited supervised contact with Dylan, contingent on his participation in family therapy and parenting classes. My mother and Amanda were both sentenced to community service and mandatory counseling, though neither showed any remorse during the proceedings. My mother maintained until the end that I had orchestrated the whole thing to turn the family against her. With the legal battles behind us, Dylan and I focused on building new traditions and routines that felt safe and nurturing. We started having Friday night dinosaur dinner parties, where we would eat dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets and watch nature documentaries. We joined a parent-child science club that met on Saturdays at the local museum, where Dylan gradually became more comfortable socializing with other children. My support network expanded beyond what I could have imagined. My hospital colleagues became like extended family. Mrs. Wilson insisted on Sunday dinners at her house, filling the void left by the toxic family gatherings we used to endure. Dylan's teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, recommended books and activities to help build his confidence. A year after the incident, the change in Dylan was remarkable. The anxious, clingy child had been replaced by a confident first grader who raised his hand in class and made friends easily. His nightmares had ceased, and he could talk about what happened with a wisdom beyond his years. "Mom," he said one evening as I tucked him in, "I don't feel scared of Grandma and Aunt Amanda anymore. Dr. Sarah says they have sickness in their hearts that makes them hurt people. That's a good way to understand it." I agreed, smoothing his curls back from his forehead. "Do you think they'll ever get better?" he asked. "I don't know, sweetheart. Some people don't want to change even when they hurt others. But that's not something you need to worry about. My job is to keep you safe, and that's what I'll always do." My own healing journey continued alongside Dylan's. My promotion to nursing director gave me more flexible hours and better pay, easing the childcare challenges that had made me dependent on my parents in the first place. I learned to recognize and counteract the critical inner voice that sounded suspiciously like my mother. We created a chosen family of friends, colleagues, and neighbors who genuinely cared for us. Our Thanksgiving and Christmas celebrations became joyful occasions, free from the walking on eggshells feeling that had characterized family holidays in the past. In the spring, A thick cream envelope arrived in the mail, addressed to me in elegant handwriting. Inside was a letter from Amanda, her first communication since the court hearing. She wrote that she had been reflecting on what happened and thought it was time to move forward as a family again. Notably absent was any acknowledgement of wrongdoing or apology for abandoning Dylan. I read the letter once, then placed it in a folder with the other documentation from our case. I had no intention of responding. Some bridges once burned should stay that way. A month later, my father called with news that my mother's health was declining. Tests had revealed early-stage Parkinson's disease, and he thought I should know. "She's asking for you," he said hesitantly. "For both of you. I think she's scared Lula. Maybe this is a chance to heal things." I took a deep breath, feeling the old pull of obligation warring with my hard-won boundaries. "I'm sorry about her diagnosis, Dad. I truly am. But I can't expose Dylan to her again. The risk is too great." "She's changed," he insisted. "The medication, the counseling, it's made a difference." "Has she acknowledged what she did? Has she apologized without excuses or blame?" His silence was answer enough. When she can take full responsibility for deliberately abandoning her grandson and then trying to blame him and me for it, we can revisit this conversation. Until then, my answer is no. Later that week, Dylan asked a question that caught me off guard. "Mom, Ms. Rodriguez was talking about forgiveness in class today. Do you think I should forgive Grandma someday?" I sat beside him on the couch, choosing my words carefully. "Forgiveness is complicated, Dylan. Sometimes it helps us heal to let go of anger toward people who hurt us. But forgiveness doesn't mean letting people keep hurting you. It doesn't mean you have to have them in your life." He nodded thoughtfully. "Like how we forgave Dad for leaving, but he still lives far away and doesn't visit much." "Something like that." I agreed, amazed at his insight. "What matters most is that you feel safe and loved. You get to decide what forgiveness means for you when you're ready. There's no rush." 2 months later, I agreed to meet my father at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between our homes. He came alone as I had insisted. Over coffee, he offered the first genuine apology I'd ever heard from him. "I failed you both," he said, his eyes holding mine steadily. "Not just that night, but throughout your life. I should have protected you from your mother's criticism, from Amanda's jealousy. I was a coward, and you and Dylan paid the price." His words uncorked emotions I'd been bottling up for decades. Tears slid down my cheeks as I told him how it felt to grow up never quite good enough, how that pattern had continued with Dylan. "I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness," he said. "I know I haven't earned it, but I'd like the chance to try to be the father and grandfather I should have been all along. On your terms, with whatever boundaries you need." After consulting with both my therapist and Dylan's, I cautiously agreed to allow supervised visits between Dylan and my father. We started with short meetings at a family therapy center, gradually increasing to occasional dinners at our home, always with me present. To his credit, my father never pushed for more than I was willing to give. He never brought up my mother, or Amanda never tried to broker peace. He simply focused on building a relationship with Dylan based on genuine interest and respect. The journey from that terrifying night when Dylan was brought home by the police to where we are today hasn't been easy. There have been setbacks, difficult conversations, and moments of doubt. But through it all, we've grown stronger, more resilient. I've learned that true family isn't defined by blood or obligation. It's created through love, respect, and consistent care. The people who truly deserve a place in our lives are those who protect us, cherish us, and help us become our best selves. Breaking the cycle of toxic family dynamics takes tremendous courage. It means facing painful truths, setting firm boundaries, and sometimes walking away from relationships that society tells us should be unbreakable. But the peace and genuine connection that come from creating a healthier family environment are worth every difficult step. As for Dylan, he's thriving now. His love of dinosaurs has expanded to include all sciences. His teacher says he might skip a grade next year. The nervous, clingy child is gone, replaced by a boy who runs confidently into his classroom each morning, secure in the knowledge that he is loved, valued, and safe. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for our children is to show them that it's okay to walk away from people who harm them, even when those people are family. By protecting Dylan, I finally learned to protect myself too. I wonder, have you ever had to make the difficult choice between family obligation and protecting yourself or someone you love? Let me know in the comments below. Your story might help someone else feeling trapped in a toxic family situation. Please like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share it with anyone who needs to hear that it's okay to choose peace over toxic family ties. Thank you for listening, and remember, you deserve to be treated with love and respect, especially by those who call themselves family.